Up next, we have our first athlete to be inducted, and that's Mel Gadd, and presenter is our chair, Ron McDonald. You good, Rocky? Yeah. Okay. That's it.
Robert Melvin Gadd, Mel, was born March 27, 1925, to Robert and Harina Gadd in the town of Waterford. He was one of 10 children, and he was married to Hazel Semple and was father to 2 daughters, Phyllis married to Bruce Halton, and Catherine married to Martin Ryan, and he was grandfather to 8. He began playing hockey and baseball at the age of 8. Mel successfully played organized sports, hockey and baseball from 1945 until 1985. His numerous successes and awards began at the age of 20 when he won the Best Player Award playing for the Waterford Dodgers, who were the Cape Breton champions that year, to the age of 57 when he was Most Valuable Player in the Pictou County Recreational Fastball League playing for the Springville Rockies. Mel became a star in Cape Breton hockey and ball before moving to Pictou County. In reference to Mel as a young hockey player in the Waterford, it was said that he was one of the outstanding players to come out of New Waterford at the time, and that harder workers and truer gentlemen haven't come along to compare. Known as the speedy left winger of New Waterford's kid line, Mel was not only recognized as a top scorer, but also for his ability to take a check and deal a hard one out. In baseball, he was a star player for the New Waterford Dodgers and known to be a most capable ball player, whether it be for his abilities at bat, his command on the mound with his ace right hand, or his stellar fielding. Some of the highlights of Mel's hockey and ball career in Cape Breton were: he received the Best Pitcher Award in 1945, playing for the Waterford Dodgers in the Cape Breton Colliery Baseball League, winning the Cape Breton Senior League title and the Passerini Memorial Trophy, causing a sensation when he jumped from junior to intermediate hockey in the same day, playing games in the afternoon and evening. He played with the famous trio known as the Kid Line, consisting of Mel Gadd, Doug Petrie, and Leo Fahey of the New Waterford Strands and Bruins in the Cape Breton Senior Hockey League. This trio became known as one of the best front lines in Cape Breton history. The 1945-46 season, a goal Mel scored for the New Waterford Strands against the Sydney Millionaires in the longest game ever played in Cape Breton history, involving 95 minutes of overtime for the Cape Breton Senior Hockey League title. Throughout this time in the CBHL, Mel was a consistent top scorer. But I wanted to show a few years ago, a fellow was at a flea market and there was a hockey picture there, but he didn't know who the players were and he bought it for $1. So he asked me, would I know who they were? Well, I took a look at it, and the S on their sweater would indicate, you might think it was a Sydney team, but the S stood for Strands. But in the Waterford, most of the time, the Strand gym, the Strands was referring to basketball teams. But I took one look at it, and I saw Leo Fahey there, and then I realized it was Fahey, Petrie, and Gadd, and Charlie Pyle. Well, Charlie Pyle was New Waterford's athlete of the first half century, up to 1950. He was a tremendous hockey player and baseball player, and he also was a great boxer. But which leads me to this here. This the puck here. When the Waterford played Sydney for the Cape Breton Senior Hockey Championship in 1946, the puck here was given to us to go to the Hall of Fame. This puck is like 77 years old. Yeah, I'll read this puck was used in the final game of the 1945-46 Cape Breton Senior Hockey League Championship. The title was captured by the New Waterford Strands. It was the first and only Cape Breton Senior Hockey League Championship to come to New Waterford. New Waterford defeated the famed Sydney Millionaires in a best-of-3 series that was played at the Sydney Forum, as New Waterford had only an outdoor rink at the time. Sydney won the first game 5-4 in overtime. New Waterford won the second game by a 2-1 score, setting the setting for one of the most exciting hockey games ever played in Cape Breton. The final game was played before 4,000 spectators at the Sydney Forum. New Waterford won 5-4, an astounding 93 minutes of overtime, the longest game in Canadian amateur hockey history up to that time. During the series, the New Waterford team was led by the high-scoring kid line, Leo Fahey, Mel Gadd, and Doug Petrie. In the final game, the scorers for New Waterford were Joe Pounder Cormier, and the kid line scored 4 goals, including the winner in the 93rd minute of overtime. But the Sydney goaltender was Abe Libbis. The Libbis family has graciously donated this puck to the New Waterford and District Sports Centre Heritage Hall of Fame. And that puck is actually older than I am.
Sure.
Anyway, Mel played hockey for the Stellarton Royals in Pictou Maripax from 1947 to 1953 and won the APC League title. During the 4 years he played, they were the winningest hockey team ever for that era. In fact, their winning ways caused the demise of the league. In 1948, Mel moved to Pictou County, where he continued to dominate hockey and ball headlines. The left winger was dubbed the Rocket Richard of the APC, which was the Antigonish Pictou Colchester League. Mel frequently maintained enviable scoring records. He played on 3 championship teams, 1949 to 1950 with the Stellarton Royals, 1952 to 53 with the Pictou Maripax, and 1955-56 with the New Glasgow Rangers. He was a top scorer in Pictou County, finishing up in second place in the scoring race, only to Lou Medinsky of the Trora Bearcats in 1953. Mel was considered a dangerous opponent. He continued to be known as a hard-working, clean, two-way hockey player with numerous hat-tricks to his credit and scoring many winning goals. Some additional highlights of Mel's career in the APC League included playing on the same line as Tick Williams and Art Dorrington in Pictou County, winning the Most Valuable Player Award in the APC League, where he continued to rank as the top scorer, being on the All-Star team playing the New York Rangers in 1951. It was very common at that time for teams that didn't make the playoffs to tour the Maritimes. Being coached by Stuffy McGuinness in baseball and Bobby Beaton in hockey. Mel continued to fulfill his love of sports and put his talents to good use throughout his later years, earning the following awards. In 1979, he was the recipient of the Pictou County Hardball John R. Cheek Trophy. 1979-1981, he was first baseman for Stellarton Intermediate Fastball, winning the Burgess Brothers Trophy for Most Valuable Player and the team championship. In 1982, he played shortstop for a fastball team, the Springville Rockies, winning 2 Most Valuable Player awards and a team championship. Once retired from organized sport, Mel resided in Stellarton with his wife Hazel and 2 daughters, Phyllis, Bruce Holton, and Catherine Martin Ryan. Mel continued to actively enjoy skating, cross-country skiing, pond hockey, tennis, bowling, where he often scored the highest single, golf, and ball. He spent every day exercising and working with horses. He played a prominent role in supporting and advising his 8 grandchildren in sports, never missing a ball game or musical performance. He was their biggest fan in anything they pursued. Mel talked fondly of his sport days in Cape Breton. With a signature grin and a wink, he always reminded his grandchildren, whether they were off to play ball or hockey, you got to keep an eye on those players from the Waterford. Chronologically, in 1945, he played baseball for the Waterford Dodgers, pitcher and fielder. In 1945, hockey for the Waterford Bruins, senior league left wing. 1946, the Waterford Strains. 1948-1950, hockey for Stellarton Royals, left wing. 1948, hardball for Stellarton Albions, pitcher and left field. 1951-54, hockey for Pictou Maripax. 54-55, hockey for Pictou Royals. 55-57, hockey for New Glasgow Rangers. 1956, hockey for Trora Bearcats in the Nova Scotia Hockey League. 1974-79, hockey and ball for Pictou County Old Timers. 78, fastball for Sobeys Independents. 79-81, fastball first base for Stellarton Intermediate and Stellarton Juniors. And 1982-1985, fastball shortstop for Springville Rockies. It gives me great pleasure to see Mel Gadd recognized by the New Waterford and District Sports Heritage Hall of Fame. And I ask his family to come up and accept his award. And his grandson, Dylan Holton, may say a few words. Thank you.
You're only supposed to go for 5 minutes. I gotta go.
Mic check, 1, 2. So it's funny, both my sisters, one couldn't be here today. She lives in Ottawa as well as myself, and then my sister here, Anne, and my mother, of course, obviously able to make it today, which is an absolute honor. Thank you, New Waterford Sports Hall of Fame. This is incredible. Oh man, it's tough, man. Once you hear my story, it's tough. Should have saw me at my wedding. But my sisters do always refer to me saying I have the gift of the gab, so I literally had to write something that was about 5.5 minutes on the dot here. And so when I come here and I hear Melvin Gadd, "5 minutes? Is that right?" We never called him that. It was Granddad. And that's a name that resonates with all of us a little differently. Some say Grandpa, some say Papa, some say Grandfather, and for us, it was Granddad. Which also, as a kid, translated to a best friend, role model, athlete, gentle soul, guardian, and the list goes on. With Granddad's talents, he was inducted not only into the Cape Breton Hall of Fame, but he was also inducted into the Pictou County Hall of Fame. But obviously today there's something a little more special about being inducted into the New Waterford Hall of Fame here, his hometown, and I know he'd be proud today. And of course, I'm originally from Pictou County. Out of high school, I actually moved out to Alberta on a baseball scholarship. And out there it led me to be recruited to North Carolina, where I played 3 years in North Carolina and a semi-pro year in Virginia. And, part of that was winning a national championship in the NCAA, which was a pretty incredible time. And it led me on my path to finish my business degree and tackle the world in a way I never would have approached if it wasn't for sports. And, of course, the game of baseball. And it was Lethbridge, Alberta, at a high school that I went to before I got recruited down to North Carolina. And I'll never forget the first day I went out there and I walked into my room at my billet's house in Lethbridge, and I sat down on my bunk bed on the bottom and I opened up my backpack. And in the suitcase was this jersey that my cousin, who's not here today, he's back in Pictou County, snuck in. And of course, it's this one. And he said, "Never forget who put a bat on your shoulder and a ball in your hand." And I owe my whole experience to Granddad. And it's one thing to stand up here and hear his accomplishments and talk about his accomplishments. Gosh, I'm a mess. But aside from goals and runs scored and everything, the thing that always stands out the most among athletes, even to this day, when I see young prospects coming up, is character. And I never saw him as an athlete growing up. I saw him as Granddad. And so to this day, I find it's so hard to believe that I was only 11 years old when he passed. He had such an impact on my life, as he did with our families' lives, to where I truly feel he was present the whole time through my high school career, my professional career, my university career. and I'm sure he was. He was kind, he was a good-looking man, and because of this, my sisters always reminded me that I was lucky to have a grandfather who had such a great head of hair. Because I too would inherit this trait, they said. So I'm not sure what happened there, but he was kind, and he'd pick us up from school all the time, and even when my parents' hands were tied, he would go for endless walks with us up at the farm. And games of catch he played with us in the backyard were endless. Grandparents, of course, Nanny and Granddad. We rarely referred to one without saying the other. It was Nanny and Granddad, and they were athletes through and through. And to think at their age, while us kids were all growing up, I have memories of them bringing their tennis rackets home and the plastic tubes of the 3 tennis balls. They always stayed true to being an athlete, and the importance of this and staying in shape was always evident. And that meant Granddad had to be stern every once in a while, too. There was one day, my sister Sarah, she's the one in Ottawa, she's a nurse out in Ottawa, she asked me to go get her a glass of great crush pop they always had in the refrigerator. And I remember this vividly. And for whatever reason, me being the younger brother, I slowly poured the crushed grape into a glass, and then I reached for the milk and decided to make a little concoction of that, too. And little did I know my granddad, sitting in his red chair in the living room, was peeking on me, watching me, and he looked at me, and it wasn't very often, but when he got stern, you listened. And he said, "Did you just mix that drink together?" And I said, "No." And then I put the drinks back in, and I walked slowly into the living room, and I passed it to my sister, and there I said, "Don't drink this." I said, "Don't drink this." Oh my gosh, the memories were unbelievable. And there was the one time Granddad used to tell me how ball players back in the day used to cook their steaks as well. He said, so we used to have a ball glove, you know, the mitt back in the day that didn't have the web to it, and it was just simply like you see the fingers in it spread out. And he used to tell me in the first inning back in the 20s and 30s, they used to put a raw steak right in the palm, and by the 9th inning, that steak would be cooked. And they'd eat it right after the game. You know, and if I did have a handful of minutes, you know, only a handful of minutes here, I could go on, which obviously brings me to my mom. And if you were to get to know my mother, you'd quickly come to realize she has an absolute heart of gold. Advice she's always given me is to take the higher road, kill people with kindness. And I can't help but feel this approach and mentality through life was passed down to her from someone. And it's led us, especially myself and my family, to believe that most people are good, do things with good intentions. So to this day, I always see the good in people, and I believe the person standing in front of me, no matter where I am, has good morals and good intentions, and that'll continue to how I choose to live my life. And it's clear this has been passed down to my mother. So it's no coincidence that the closest person who was a brother to me, which is my cousin, his middle name's Gadd. And today I'm married with 3 boys. And this is out in Ottawa. My youngest is 18 months old. His name's Shay. And my middle boy, he's 3 years old, and his name's Nash. And of course, my oldest boy, he's 5, and his name's Gadd. And yeah, this hangs up in their room out in Ottawa, so it's kind of cool. He was definitely more than just a grandparent to me. I think having such a prominent effect on a child's life in such a short time speaks volumes to now as an adult and as a father. It is. And when my kids grow up and have children one day, making me a grandfather, I hope they come to me as a kind man, you know, and I hope I'm one with good morals and like to have fun with my grandkids. And I hope I can put a bat on my grandkids' shoulders and a ball in their hand. And because it's taught me more lesson than about sports and made me who I am today. And I hope most of all that my grandkids get to call me Granddad. So I think about Granddad, Melvin, every day. And New Waterford, thank you so much for honoring him today. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you so much.